US cover now to the European cover, and a body that tackles challenges actually just like this is the SFO, the Serious Fraud Office in the UK.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating organization, and the theme that I think viewers and readers should know about this, it's sort of a Serious Times moment at the Serious Fraud Office. So the Serious Fraud Office is responsible for basically looking at UK businesses and making sure that things aren't corrupt. And in the moment of Brexit, where UK is actually trying to retain as much business as they can, funny enough, this organization is somewhat in the crosshairs because they're doing their jobs almost too well. It's like, can you imagine, like, they're going after white-collar criminals, and now they're the government is kind of looking at them, and there's a lot of speculation that maybe this organization, as it exists right now, won't exist going forward because they've done too good of a job at cracking down on business crimes.
Yeah, certainly if this Prime Minister remains in her seat. Let's get to reporter now, Susie Ring, with that story.
The Serious Fraud Office is an agency in the UK that's been around for about 30 years, and it's our main criminal prosecutor, particularly focused on fraud and bribery. So it will be the prosecutor behind most of our white-collar criminal cases, roughly equivalent to the US Department of Justice's fraud section. So in 2012, when David Green came in, the agency was really at an all-time low. It had just managed to avoid being wrapped into another agency called the National Crime Agency. The government, Theresa May at the time being Home Secretary, was very keen for it to be joined with other prosecutors and regulators into one agency that was focused on a wide variety of things. It just avoided that. But morale was at an all-time low. A lot of staff had left, and it had just botched a prosecution into the Cengiz brothers, which are very well-known real estate tycoons in London, and been derided in court as having acted extremely recklessly. So David Green joined with an agency that was really at an all-time low and needed to develop it from there. He had come in with a background as a barrister, so a trial lawyer in London, having defended and prosecuted cases like this for 30 years, and also had some government experience, so knew what the path of a civil servant was like, which was extremely helpful. But he was starting from a very low base, but decided that he really wanted to put the agency back on track, doing what it was supposed to do, and that was prosecuting the real top-tier cases of white-collar crime.
His term ends in April of this year. His successor is appointed by May's Attorney General. As you said before, actually, she's already tried to fold this agency into a separate one. So where does the future lie for the CFO, the SFO?
This is a really key moment. So what we've seen is, with Brexit, obviously a year away from now, we're going to be leaving the European Union, and there's a lot at stake with that, regardless of the Serious Fraud Office. But in the Conservative manifesto last year, so post the Brexit vote, when everything should be focused on Brexit, Theresa May once again put in the manifesto this proposition to close the Serious Fraud Office and wrap it into the NCA, which has brought a lot of questions as to why that was such a focus for her. That was absolutely nothing to do with Brexit and where her focus should be, and really just raised questions around, that was the third time that we'd seen threat to the Serious Fraud Office, even after having such a successful run under David Green. So what does that really mean for a post-Brexit future when the UK is looking for investment from other countries outside the EU? Are we trying to send a message that we're not going to be as hot on corruption? What is May and her colleagues trying to achieve with this constant ambition to wrap the SFO into another agency?
So ultimately, it'll be a big message being sent not only to the UK but to the world, depending on what happens after his term ends.
Exactly. So we're waiting to see who his successor will be. We should find out around the end of March. And what happens from that point? David Green has obviously had a very good and successful run by all accounts over the last 6 years, and he's left the agency in a very good state for somebody to take it forwards in that vein. And so it'll be interesting to see who May's Attorney General decides to appoint to take over that role, and what kind of briefing they are given as to how the agency should be going forwards.
I mean, the UK is desperate to make sure that post-Brexit they still get increased investment. So you can kind of understand the concern here and the thinking, but is the message here too that actually the UK's ability to fight corporate crime will be seriously diminished if the SFO isn't a standalone agency as it is today?
That is the view by most people in the industry, because the SFO has achieved so much in the last 6 years in terms of becoming a credible agency and a credible deterrent to corruption in London. So if the SFO then is wrapped into another agency, which would inevitably, like any sort of merger or change, would come with teething problems and put it off focus inevitably for a while, what message is that going to send to people who want to invest in the UK not through transparent means and not through the correct processes? Is that going to get rid of all of the work that Green has done to send a message that London doesn't tolerate corruption, and actually open ourselves up to investors that we potentially don't want to be investing in our country?